Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Baltzell. I'm the statewide salmon and steelhead manager for the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Want to welcome everybody to our North of Falcon 2 Zoom meeting today. Up on the screen, we have some kind of Zoom meeting call logistics ground rules. I'll just kind of tick through those really quick as we're having more people join us so far this morning. We noticed that some of the things on the screen may not work for everybody. There are a number of different versions of Zoom out there, depending on whether you're on your phone or on the computer. I think most importantly for people who are on the phone, you can mute and unmute yourself by pressing *6. And as we go through the presentation and take questions, if you have a question, we ask that you raise your hand. If you're on the phone, you can do this by dialing *9. And as I said, there's a number of different versions of how you can do this on the computer. Sometimes there's a raised hand feature at the bottom. Sometimes it's under an icon that says emotions, and you hover over that and there's a raised hand there. Also, sometimes you can see under the panelists, there's a place there where you can, or under the meeting attendees, there's a place there to raise your hand as well. If you have any problems, technical difficulties as we go through, you can use the chat feature. Leah, a member of our staff from the department, is very helpful in this regard. She'll try to do her best to make sure that you're taken care of. We're going to do a main part of the presentation this morning, just to give you a little general overview, and then we're going to launch into some breakout rooms to discuss the issues. I want to remind everybody some of our ground rules for these meetings. We ask that everybody try to be respectful of each other. When you're not talking, if you could please mute your phone or your computer line. We ask that you be tough on issues and questions, but not on people or organizations. Please refrain from personal attacks, insults, or threats. Please be an active listener. We also ask that you speak and act professionally. Avoid using offensive, disrespectful, or derogatory language. Also remember, we've given a large amount of time today to get through the issues and hear people's comments and questions. But just remember, there are others on the line that want to speak and ask questions. Please remember that this meeting is being recorded. You are able to view it later on our website. And I believe it is also being carried today by TV Washington. Next slide, please. So for our agenda today, we're going to go through a generalized overview of the North and Falcon process. We're going to just do a quick overview of the forecasts. Our modeling team's going to go through some of the management objectives for both Chinook and Coho this year and kind of the current proposals and modeling. From there, we're going to go into our breakout meetings today. This meeting is pretty Puget Sound centric. We are interested if there's folks here from the coast or Columbia River. We can make sure to direct you to the next meetings we have there. I might just mention here at the beginning, there is a Columbia River North of Falcon meeting scheduled for tomorrow. You can find those details on our website. And also Monday and Tuesday of next week will be coastal meetings. Monday is Willapa Bay Fisheries, Tuesday is Grays Harbor Fisheries. I also want to bring your attention to the last bullet on the agenda. Today, starting at 3, we have a co-manager plenary session scheduled from 3 to 5. The co-manager plenary session from 3 to 5 today. It'll be hosted by WDFW and tribal leaders. They're going to talk through some of the conservation and management issues we have through North of Falcon, and everybody will have the ability to ask questions of those folks as well. So we invite everybody to join us after this meeting today. If perchance we're still going, that is a separate link So if we're still having discussions here at 3, staff will still be able to be on here for this meeting today. Next slide, please. So just want to kind of run through, folks, we've started these meetings in late February with our forecast meetings. We've had a number of different meetings, both with Willapa, Columbia River, trying to get through these preseason fisheries discussions. Next slide, please. I think we skipped a slide there, Jake. So here we are on March 31st. It's the second North of Falcon meeting. From here, as I said, next week we'll have some coastal discussions leading into the Pacific Fishery Management Council meeting starting next Thursday. We will be having daily briefings from the department. Please check the website and sign up for that or get the link. Every morning starting at 8 a.m. Staff will be doing a briefing of where things stand in the process, what the current fishery proposals are that are on the table, and give you an idea of what some of the ongoing co-manager discussions are around shaping salmon fisheries. Next slide, please. So as we've talked about in previous meetings, and you'll find a bunch of information on our website, there are a number of factors that go into how we shape salmon seasons in Washington and along the coast. As you know, we must weigh a number of different factors, including the Endangered Species Act, our Fish and Wildlife Commission policy that guides North of Falcon. We have obligations under the Pacific Salmon Treaty. We also have tribal co-management agreements and court decisions that help guide our fisheries and sharing. And then obviously we have extensive monitoring and evaluation of all these fisheries coastwide and statewide that helps guide our management year to year. The North of Falcon process, as I've said, is a yearly process. These are some basic tenets of that process. As I stated earlier, it starts in late February or late January, actually, where tribal and state biologists and scientists are working on forecasting the abundance of each stock. From there, we determine if there's enough fish forecasted to come back to see if there's a harvestable surplus of those fish. We think about those seasons and work on proposing fisheries and modeling fisheries to determine what those impacts might be on conservation constraints or stocks of concern. We negotiate those seasons with our tribal co-managers and other states for a fair sharing of impacts and catch. Finally, hopefully here in a few weeks, we'll have an agreed to fishing package, also known as the LOAF, and this will describe fisheries for all over the coast, Puget Sound and Columbia River. Next slide, please. Also, as part of our North of Falcon process, we go through this complex set of rulemaking under our State Administrative Procedures Act. This starts in January. This process starts in January with what's called a CR 101 filing. That's where we give notice of rules that we're considering changes to. Following that, as part of this APA process, is a 102 filing. That will happen following North of Falcon after we've had a chance to get to an agreed to fishing package. We will then publish those rules. We'll take written comments and public feedback on those rules, consider any proposed modifications to those, and identify and fix any errors that we found since filing the 102. Well, finally, the next step in this process is to file a CR 103 with a concise explanatory statement of what rules changed and why. And the director signs those. They go into effect 31 days after filing. Next slide, please. Just wanted to touch on some of the ocean alternatives that came out of the first Pacific Fishery Management Council meeting. You'll see both a look at last year's alternatives versus this year. You can see that Chinook levels are pretty consistent. Proposed levels are pretty consistent with what they were last year. And due to the higher Columbia River abundances forecasted for coho this year, you can see those proposed non-treaty ocean quotas for coho are quite a bit higher than they were last year. Folks will also notice on the alternate 3 that there's a proposal there for closing the ocean to salmon fishing this year. That is primarily due to concern for coastal coho stocks. Had some big downturns there in recent years. All the parties wanted to make sure that we were considering all our options on the table as we worked our way through this preseason. Next slide, please. Just wanted to tick through some of the forecasts really quick as a recap. Again, all this information is available on our website, but I wanted to just give a few kind of highlights as to what are our kind of big constrainers as far as ocean and Puget Sound fisheries this year. So you can see the fall Chinook for the coast and Willapa are up slightly from 2020. As I mentioned before, the coastal coho forecasts are overall down, with the Queets forecast due to be below the escapement floor. As I also stated, Columbia River coho are due to return, a large return this year, almost 1.6 million between the early and the late stocks. And then Columbia River fall Chinook is up slightly. There's a mix of stronger and weaker returns just depending on what the stock is and where it is on the river. Next slide, please. For Puget Sound Chinook, our natural stocks are about down about 20% from the recent 10-year average, and the hatchery stocks are down just slightly from the recent 10-year. I think of note on the hatchery stocks, we are seeing significant decreases in the South Sound hatchery populations this year. For Puget Sound coho, the natural stocks are down just slightly, and the hatchery stocks are up pretty significantly from the 10-year average. As folks know, 2021 is a pink year. The Puget Sound pink forecast is about 6 million fish this year, or 3 million fish, I'm sorry, close to the 2019 actual return. One of the troubling spots for us in the recent several years has been Puget Sound chum. Natural stocks for chum are down 61% and hatchery stocks are down 64% from the 10-year average. Next slide, please. So from here, I'm going to pause and hand the microphone over to Derek Dapp from our FRAM modeling team.
Thanks for that, Mark. And so before getting into some of the management objectives, I thought it might be a good idea to cover some of the important terminology and acronyms that we use here in the management world. Starting off with ERs is an acronym you'll see both on this slide and on subsequent slides. And ER stands for exploitation rate. And an exploitation rate represents the percentage of adult removals being removed by either a fishery or a grouping of fisheries. We have different ERs that we're managing to different types of ERs. And those would be a total exploitation rate, which represents the adult removals from all fisheries along the West Coast. We have an SUS exploitation rate metric for some of our Puget Sound and some of our other stocks. SUS stands for Southern US exploitation rate, and that represents adult removals just in fisheries south of Canada. And lastly, another metric that we'll see later is a pre-terminal Southern US exploitation rate. And what that one represents is that represents adult removals that are occurring south of Canada and in the marine area. So before we actually get into Puget Sound, I wanted to cover kind of some of the key stocks that we have in the ocean and that we're monitoring. Mark had already mentioned some of our coastal coho concerns for this year. And you can see one of the ones that we'll be paying really close attention to as far as coastal coho go is the Queets Natural Coho. For that stock, we have an escapement floor of 5,800 fish, and our current projections are coming out as below that number. For Chinook on the coast, we're really looking at lower Columbia River tules. And for those, we have a management objective of 38% total exploitation rate this year. We're paying close attention to that one. Lastly, as Mark had mentioned, the Columbia River coho are in a higher abundance state this year than we've seen in some recent years. And for that one, we have an ER limit of 30%. If we could go to the next slide, Jake. Thank you. So starting with the Puget Sound management objectives, I'm just going to hit kind of some of the ones to be paying attention to here. The objectives themselves are pretty much unchanged from last year with 2 exceptions. We can see that those 2 exceptions for this year are Skagit Summer Falls and the Skagit Spring Run. Both of those stocks are coming out as below their low abundance threshold. And so we're at a more constrained management objectives than we have been in recent years. We can see for that one, for the Skagit Summer Falls, we're at a 17% SUS ER management objective. And then for the Springs, we're at a 10.3% SUS ER management objective. There are 2 other stocks that I'd call our attention to. First of all, looking toward the bottom, Midhood Canal that's highlighted. You might notice that that one's highlighted as to be determined for an exploitation rate goal. And that one is one where we're having regional discussions with our co-managers there, and we'll have some more information at a later point. As far as Stillaguamish River, another one that's highlighted, that's kind of been one of our big constrainers in recent years for Puget Sound sport fisheries, a stock that we've really been paying attention to and a stock of concern. And you can see that we have 3 different exploitation rate objectives there. We have a 22% total exploitation rate objective, an 8% unmarked SUS exploitation rate objective, and a 12% marked SUS exploitation rate objective. We'll get into more of the modeling on some of these stocks and how they're coming out in the initial model runs in just a few slides. But before doing that, I'd like to go over the coho management objectives. So if we could switch to, thank you. So looking at some of the coho management objectives here, once again, these are also pretty unchanged from last year. The one exception being the Stillaguamish stock, which is in a slightly higher abundance category than last year. And for that one, we're seeing the management objective as 50% this year, whereas it was 35% last year. There are really kind of 2 stocks that we're going to be looking at in subsequent slides. The first one I'd call our attention to is Snohomish coho. And there we have an escapement goal of 55,000 fish. You can see in our initial modeling, it's our escapements projected to be lower than that 55,000 mark. So we're really paying attention to that stock as we're going through our modeling exercises. Another one that I'll highlight kind of in subsequent slides is Skagit, which has a 35% total exploitation rate ceiling and is currently exceeding that slightly in all of our management, in all of our ocean option runs. If we could move to the next slide and jump into the modeling a little bit. All right, so I'd like to describe what is in our modeling exercises at this point. I think that would be a good idea to go through that before I go through the actual modeling results. And I might start off with the ocean options. Mark had mentioned kind of the range of ocean options that we have for this year. But just to reiterate those, we're looking at from a range of high to low for Chinook. We're looking at a range of 60,000, 50,000, and then 0. As far as coho go, we're looking at a range of 80,000 and then a 90K plus 20K. And then a 0. The 90K plus 20K represents a quota of 90,000 plus 20,000 additional fish being added into Area 1. So that's what's in these current model runs. As far as northern fisheries go, they've all been updated. That's with the exception of for Chinook, West Coast Vancouver Island, Troll and Sport, and Northern British Columbia, Troll and Sport. The fishery inputs for those 2 fisheries are being finalized kind of as we speak, and the due date is today, so hopefully we get those into the modeling soon. As far as Puget Sound fisheries go, the fisheries that we have in here represent the 2021 inputs, so we are putting 2021 fisheries into this model, and I guess when we get into the individual breakout rooms, we'll go through some of what those sport inputs are for those interested. However, now to switch to actually what we're seeing in our initial runs. Starting off with kind of Nooksack Springs and Nisqually, these are 2 stocks that we can see are exceeding their management objectives in the high ocean option runs and some of the other ocean option runs as well. These are 2 stocks that we're definitely going to be paying attention to. However, we don't think they're going to be our primary marine area constrainers. For Skagit Summer Falls and Skagit Springs, as I'd mentioned in previous slides, those are 2 stocks that we're paying attention to as they're falling below their low abundance threshold. You can see that the Skagit Summer Falls is at a 17% SUS exploitation rate objective. And in our high ocean option run, we're coming out with results of 32.8%, so quite a bit off there. For Skagit Springs, we're looking at a 10.3% SUS objective, and we're coming out as 15% in our initial model runs. So once again, also quite a bit off there. One thing I would say is that the marine area fisheries generally have a lower impact on these. So we'll kind of be working with our regional co-managers and doing some shaping on those stocks. One other stock I wanted to highlight is Stillaguamish River, and we'll definitely dive more into Stillaguamish River in the breakout room for Puget Sound Rec. But here what we can see is that we're also exceeding our objective on Stillaguamish. Stillaguamish has been one of our primary constrainers to marine sport fisheries in recent years, and I think it continues to be so in this year. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Taking a quick look at coho here, as I'd mentioned on Skagit, we're over our 35% objective on all of the ocean options. You can see that our ocean options are ranging between 37.3% and 39.6%. The other metric that I'd call our attention to is that Snohomish escapement, once again, a goal of 55,000 fish there. And we see our range of escapements in the low to high ocean options, and doesn't look like we're going to be meeting that escapement goal. And so that's another one that we're paying attention to and working with regional co-managers as we shape our fisheries. So I might pass it back to Mark now. Once again, we'll go into the modeling a little bit more depth in some of the breakout rooms, but thanks.
Thank you, Derek. Appreciate that. So what I thought I might do right now is open things up for general questions about anything you've heard so far, any of the forecast stuff, any of the modeling stuff that just is kind of pertain to generally. I want to allow for some general questions first before we jump into the different breakout rooms. So remember, if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question, it's *9. Also, if you're on your computer, there's a number of different ways to raise your hand. There's a reactions button at the bottom of your screen. There's a raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. I see Carl with his hand up. Go ahead,
hey, Mark,
Carl.
just a quick question on Derek's presentation there. You know, where it said this year's, what did it say? Last year's fisheries with this year's abundance, right? But then it said high ocean option, which would be this year's fisheries. So that was confusing to me. I thought we were about, you know, it looked like it was last year's fisheries with this year's abundance, but then it mentioned this year's fisheries on the high ocean option. Or was that last year's high ocean option?
Hey, Carl, if I could, that's my mistake. I was recycling some of these slides and I didn't see that it said 2020 fisheries on that coho one. That's my apologies for the confusion there, and I'm glad that you caught that so that I could clarify. These model runs do have 2021 fisheries inside them, so apologies on that.
That makes a lot more sense. Thank you.
Are there any other general questions about forecasts or any of the modeling thus far? So as I stated earlier, hopefully everybody registered for a breakout room when they got the meeting link. Our two main breakout rooms that we've planned for today are centered around Puget Sound recreational fisheries, both marine and freshwater, and then Puget Sound commercial fisheries. We also listed an option for a coastal breakout. We have staff available to answer questions, but I just want to remind folks, we have a public meetings on Monday and Tuesday of next week to cover Grays Harbor and Willapa fisheries. And then also, we'll be starting our Pacific Fishery Management Council meetings next week to go over ocean fisheries. And also a reminder, there will be a Columbia River meeting tomorrow to go over where things are at currently with modeling and fishery shaping in the Columbia. Also, maybe just wanted to let folks know that just a quick reminder that there is a bunch of information up on the web, different modeling results, forecasts, and other materials. We're updating that the website pretty consistently with new information as it becomes available. So please, folks, go ahead and check that out. With that, I am going to suggest that we enter our breakout rooms. I want to give everybody maybe just a 5-minute break to allow Leah enough time with those folks who need help getting into the breakout rooms. So let's just plan on coming back together, or at least I'll be in the Puget Sound Rec Room. We'll start that right around 9:30, 9:31.
That sounds good to me, Mark. That'll give me a chance to get everybody situated and pre-register.
Great, thank you, Leah.
Also, people might have, if you're on a computer, you may have the option to choose your own breakout room. Feel free to do that if you have the option. Brad Wilkins, which breakout room would you like to be assigned to?
The commercial, please.
Bryce Levin, which breakout room would you like to be assigned to?
Puget Sound recreational, please.
Dan Conyers,
Puget Sound recreation.
Dane Woldseth, David Malahan, David, Christopher Clark,
Puget Sound rec.
oh. Mark Shinman,
Puget Sound rec.
Kyle Butterfield,
The Puget Sound rec.
and David Malahan,
Coastal.
It looks on my end now like everyone has been assigned to a room. Please let me know if you can still hear me and I will fix you from being in limbo.
Leah, this is Jenny Whitney. Can you put me in coastal?
Yes.
Leah, this is Greg King. Can you put me in coastal? Thank you.
Of course.
Leah, this is Frank Baker. Put me in Puget Sound rec.
Okie dokie.
Yeah, I
40 minutes to yeah.
twice.
Is there anyone else that still needs a breakout room that's waiting in the main room?
Yeah, this is Nick Jones. I just logged in with my phone rather than computer, so I can walk around. I'd like to go to commercial breakout.
Sounds good. Sending you there now.
Thank you.
Nick Jones, are you in the correct room? What about Dave Kroonquist?
Yes, Puget Sound, please.
Okay. Commercial or rec?
Rec, please. Rec.
You should be in there now. I had to move you out and put you back in.
Thank you, Leah.
No problem. Lance, looks like you're sitting out in limbo still. Also Mike Henderson.